All right, wargaming enthusiasts. I wanted to push up here to my YouTube channel a follow-up about an article that I posted to my Wargamer Fritz mailing list. I'm going to put that link underneath this podcast in the info box. Following up on this article, posting it to YouTube because I've gotten some interesting feedback, some interesting dynamics on it. And one of the things that I was aiming to do to push out to the mailing list, since I don't know, and the same would apply to YouTube, where are you in the moment in your wargaming journey? Whether that's Warhammer 40,000, whether that's Battletech, you're exploring a new system like Chain of Command or Wings of Glory. I don't know where you are in that moment. So I wanted to kind of, in addition to exploring the tactics and the content for the various systems that I enjoy, try to go back in time a little bit. Try to step back a little bit and ask myself from the perspective of someone completely new, where do we begin? What are three things? It was going to be five, but I thought three starting points that you can become aware of, instantly start to use, and win your next game. That's kind of the charge and the mission. And this was an interesting exercise because if you've been playing a wargaming system for a long time, I've been playing Warhammer 40,000. It's a sci-fi miniature game for a long time. I have an idea of the type of armies I like to play. I understand how to build lists. I, in theory, do my best to understand to execute tactics on the tabletop. But when I started Chain of Command about 2 years ago, Chain of Command is a World War II historical game. It was interesting because here I have all this wargaming experience, but it doesn't necessarily directly relate to Chain of Command. And this was an entirely new gaming experience. So I've been rebooted to the status of new player on here. And these are the three strategies that I utilized very, very quickly to get myself up to speed. Now, I have to say also, kind of framing this, building the foundation, this idea that if you've been following my podcast, if you've been checking out my blog for a while, you know that I would consider myself a narrative player. We're getting together, we're going to roll some dice, we're going to blow up some models, we've got painted models, we've got terrain, we've got the appropriate background music and food and snacks going here, drink and stuff, and we're trying to step out of reality for a little bit. We're trying to create something memorable on the tabletop. So I enjoy playing a variety of units, I enjoy exploring a variety of tactics, and while I'm going to do my best to win in those parameters, I want us to have a good time. That's kind of the focus 99% of the time. All right, maybe 90% of the time. But then there are times when you need to go full competitive. Maybe you're starting to play in tournaments. Now, I still enjoy the odd tournament here and there, but from 2008 to about 2011 or 2012, maybe the beginning of 2013, I considered myself a competitive tournament player for Warhammer 40,000. I considered myself, a few years back, X-Wing Miniatures, a competitive player. The idea was I'm going to play and I'm going to test out my skills and I'm going to try and win games. That's a vastly different approach. So sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes there are times in your gaming club or group, I'm thinking of a few people, but I'm not going to name any names. I don't mean this in a negative way, but there are players that due to rivalry or a good-natured spirit, or perhaps that you're going to hear about it all week in random emails and texts and pictures, that I can't lose this week. I can't make this happen. Then there's other scenarios where you want revenge. So there might be aspects of wargaming, while I'd like us to go in as the narrative player, there are times when you got to put that aside and kind of do what you have to do. So the very first exercise to start is having a plan, not only for your army, but every unit in the army. And I do this exercise when I'm building a Battletech lance consisting of mechs and tanks and infantry and air support. Or after I build my 40K list, hey, I'm going to play this list and this is what I'm going to do. I find it helpful to physically lay out the models on there. Lay them out on the gaming table. Think about glory to come and past glories and say, what is the goal of this unit? What is this unit going to do on there? And when you define that, do that on the table. Execute that no matter what happens. Chain of Command, playing Tiger tanks and Tiger 2 tanks, a very, very potent tank in the rules system, some of the most powerful tanks in the game, and I love tanks. So when I take this tank for the support choice, regardless of the mission, its role is to roll out, supported of course, but to roll out and attack. It's not going to sit back. It's not going to try and just wait to kind of counterattack. It is going to attack. That is its role. If it gets immobilized on the way in, or if it takes a couple of hits and the crew takes some shock, or even if it gets hit by one of those anti-tank guns that I know is hiding somewhere on the table, that's going to happen. That's the dice. That's where you adapt. But by having a plan for your unit and executing it on the table, you are going to shift the initiative. You are going to put your opponent on the defensive because there's going to be no hesitation. Another example in Battletech is the Thorn. It's a light mech, so it's very, very fast. It has a couple of medium lasers, so it's got a little bit of bite for a light class mech. It's a light class mech. And it has a long range missile pack on it, very, very small 5-pack of missiles. The role of the Thorn is just to basically, the role I've assigned it, is to run around and just kind of shoot long-range missiles at whatever target it possibly can. It's a disruption unit. I want my opponent to focus on it. I want them to waste a couple of long-range shots at that as opposed to some of my other tactical assets. Sometimes it gets blown up. Sometimes it doesn't. I am risking it a little bit by putting it out there, but in theory it's a light mech, so it's running fast. It's got movement modifiers to hit. The long-range capacity of the missiles means I'm shooting from long range, so I've got that stacking on there. Having a plan for every single unit. The recent podcast, my Assault Marines. I love running Assault Marines. I love Black Templars. I love the Bolt Pistol and Chainsword. So I'm going to drop these Assault Marines in, and that's up in the archives too under Warhammer 40K if you want to check that out under that playlist. Just dropping those in. And causing some problems and seeing if for one turn I can keep my opponent busy. And we can go on and we'll explore various units. But that's the first thing that you can do. Designate a role for every single unit. Part 2 on the email list that I sent out in the article was the idea now, the converse of it, the exact opposite. As your opponent is pulling out their models, what is the goal? What is the role of those models? Assuming that you know what they are. Warhammer 40,000, as an example, there's very little hidden information. You see your opponent's units, you can review the list before the game, and you get to kind of know how they're going to enter on the table, what that entry point's going to be. Something like Chain of Command, it's a little bit harder because the units are hidden until they deploy out. So your opponent, or I have my list, I have my units hidden. Once they deploy, you know. If it's not a revealed system, if it's not a hidden system, you're going to do the exact opposite. You're going to look and say, well, okay, what is my opponent going to do with these units? If you're unsure, you're going to know pretty quick, turn 1, what they're doing. Because they're going to roll out, they're going to be defensive, they're going to look to outflank, they're going to look to positioning, deployment, and jump-off points for various games. That's going to give you some insight on there. Those are the first 2 pieces. The third piece. Now, this is where certainly you're going to watch videos. You're going to have battle reports. Hopefully, you're checking out posts on my blog and my mailing lists and everything. But not just myself, the community, whatever that's going to be for you. Battletech, 40K, X-Wing Miniatures, Wings of Glory, whatever your system is going to be. We want to plug into that community, and you want to get good feedback. You want to get good ideas. You want to utilize them and make them your own. And naturally, as you play games, you're going to work on implementing those strategies and your own insights that you discover based on your player personality. So we've got a lot of stuff in the mix as you're rolling dice and blowing up miniatures here. Can we speed that up? How can we do that? Now this, when I've utilized this type of play style, it's always been under a get together with a friend with the idea we were both working on this very aspect of it. Play the first 3 turns of a game if it's 40K. If it's a infinite game system like Battletech, there is no end. You just go on and on and on until the mission parameters are met. Play till 6 turns. Whatever the midpoint is, for your gaming system, play till then. Play a regular game, whatever mission it's going to be, whatever level it's going to be at. Play it out halfway through the game. Stop, dice down, make the call. Who would win the game? Reset, play another mission, play it again. Midway point, whatever that is for your system, dice down, who would win? Now, the kind of the matrix here, the idea here is you got to roll the dice. You got to push the miniatures around. You got to get in, flight time, hours, whatever it's going to be playing. But for the most part, now there are always those exceptions, and in the comments, we've seen it, where you want to play the game out to the end because, look, anything can happen if it's dice, especially if it's a Games Workshop game. You could blow apart 90% of my army, but somehow I win in the end on there. We've all had those experiences. So you always do want to play the game out to the absolute end. And there is the social contract. You and I, as very real players, we're taking valuable time away from other responsibilities, life, school, family, work, friends, whatever it's going to be. And we're going to do this wargaming thing, right? We're going to play this game here. So I want to extend that social courtesy to you to play it out. If you are crushing me on the table, I'm not happy about it. But I want you to have your good time. And that's also why I love playing Khornate Berserker-themed armies, my Berserkers of Scalathrax for 40K, because Khorne always wins. If I'm crushing you, if I'm dominating you with the chain sword and the bolt pistol and the chain axe, it's all good. If you're just totally destroying me because you're like, I brought 3 knights and you're doing the hotness of the month, whatever GW is pushing, it's all good because I'm just going to charge you anyway. And we're going to go down in Khornate glory. I'm going to try and drown you in blood on there. Well, maybe I should revisit that sentence because the YouTube bots are going to totally flag this video. But there's a difference between this aspect of game training versus an actual game. I would never supposed to do this meeting with my friends or playing at the club. We're there socially. But if I'm with Jawa Balls or if I'm with some of the other guys back in the day and we're like, look, show up at my place, 9 o'clock, and we're going to take a break for lunch and dinner, and we'll hang out a little bit, but basically 9 to 9 is getting in war games. And if you think about 40K, the average time of play, let's say an average 40K game is 3 hours, 40,000, Warhammer 40,000 game, 3 hours, or whatever your system is, X-Wing, you do it in an hour and a half. If you play to the midway point in that same time period, you can get in times 2 or times 3 games. You get in more games. Because 90% of the time, most of the time, by that midway point, the winner and the loser has been decided. And the reason for this, all war games, because otherwise they kind of go on forever, are a finite resource. You have X number of units, X number of models. Even if you have a special rule that lets you get partial reinforcements, Endless Swarm or something like that across the various incarnations of 40K, you have finite resources. So every turn, you have less and less models on the table. And the models are dice. They're the ability to interact. Eventually, you're going to lose what I call critical mass. Critical mass is having the models for the game to accomplish the mission. When that dips down, the chances of you winning, when it hits that tipping point, they're very, very low. Again, it could happen. And this is why you also want to play it out to the end, to try and seize that victory in the moment. But if we're talking about getting in flight time, if we're talking about getting in the hours, that's what we try and do. You play it to the midway point, reset, play again. Play it to the midway point, reset, play again. You're going to learn your tactics. You're going to learn your units. You're going to learn execution on the table. But more importantly, and this was kind of the final thrust of the my email article, it's going to condition you to be aggressive. Aggressive in a good way. It's going to teach you to be decisive. It's going to teach you to make a decision in the moment. Here are my units. Here's how I'm using them. Here are my opponent's units. This is what they're looking to do. This is the mission. Execute without mercy on the table. And it's going to help push you into that. Of course, in a narrative play, you can dial it down. Or in competitive play from that person that I can't keep on getting texts from them because you got lucky last week. Wait till this Friday, and then let's see. Then sometimes you have to really dial it up on there. 3 things to execute as a new wargamer, or if you're a veteran wargamer, you enjoy a variety of systems like myself, but you're starting a new system, because you will. It happens. Your collection is never complete. These are the first 3 starting points that I would say jumping into the game.